was weird about Antarctica?
Antarctica is the last frontier. It holds our imagination. Old maps that said, "Here be monsters." The last remaining territory on the planet that could have such a designation is Antarctica.
Antarctica is so cold and remote that nothing should survive beneath its ice.
There's no insects, there's no wildlife, the sun doesn't go down.
But when a team of Chinese scientists launched a new expedition there, they found something no one was prepared for.
The rings of the structure look like the walls of some sort of compound, like something that's been designed.
In the middle of the Antarctic.
What is the tarpaulin covering?
What in the world is that doing there?
Instruments failed, signals went silent, and what they saw made several of them vow never to return.
I am going to tell you about the most incredible place.
The last blank on Earth. Antarctica is Earth's most lifeless and least understood landmass. It covers more than 5 million square miles of ice, an entire continent locked beneath temperatures that can drop to 80 degrees below zero. There are no trees, no permanent residents, and for most of human history, no reason to go there. The winds are so strong that even military aircraft struggle to land.
65, with gusts reaching a staggering 85 miles an hour.
For centuries, explorers called it the last blank, a place so remote that even satellites could barely make sense of what they were seeing. Yet under that endless white surface, scientists have discovered clues that suggest the land below is far from dead.
3,000-mile radar warning network across the top of the world.
As far back as the 1950s, early radar and gravity readings hinted that Antarctica's surface was hiding something extraordinary. The equipment was crude and often unreliable, but the data showed strange patterns that could not be explained by ordinary geology. By the 1970s, Cold War technology allowed for more precise mapping, and researchers began noticing buried craters and mountain ranges that should not exist.
I didn't know about that enormous crater that's in Antarctica. So researchers have discovered a crater 1.5 kilometers beneath the Antarctica ice crust, 482 kilometers in diameter. 482 kilometers in diameter.
Some of them resembled the scars left by massive impacts, possibly from ancient asteroids or comets that struck long before recorded history.
What's under Antarctica? We don't know yet, but there's evidence that there's a really big crater under the ice in Antarctica.
One particular region drew attention because it showed both circular impact patterns and magnetic interference. It was as if something metallic, perhaps even artificial, was distorting the readings.
The source of a strange radio signal that's coming from below the ice in Antarctica.
At first, these signals were dismissed as errors. Scientists said that shifting ice, volcanic rock, or mineral deposits could cause false readings. Others argued that the thick ice sheet played tricks on the instruments. For decades, the anomalies were cataloged and ignored. Only a handful of researchers believed that something unusual might be buried under the ice. According to some early reports, small magnetic pulses in East Antarctica even disrupted research equipment. The data never proved anything conclusive, but it was enough to make certain scientists curious. By the late 1970s, the race to study Antarctica had quietly become a contest between nations. The United States, Russia, and a few European countries operated major research bases, but large sections of the continent remained unmapped. The technology to see through 2 miles of solid ice simply did not exist. As global concern about climate change grew, governments realized that whoever mastered Antarctic research would also control the data that could predict the planet's future. Beneath the ice were clues to Earth's climate history, to its geological past, and possibly to something much older. By the late 1980s, researchers from several nations had mapped fragments of Antarctica's buried landscape, but no one had solved the mystery of the strange readings. The signals remained unexplained, and most teams had moved on to other projects. Then China decided to join the race. China arrives on the ice. The decision quickly turned into action. In 1980, China joined the Antarctic Treaty System and began preparing its first mission to the southern continent. Australia, one of the region's leading research powers, extended an invitation for Chinese scientists to join one of its expeditions. The goal was to help China gain polar experience and establish a cooperative presence under the treaty. At the time, China had no icebreakers, no polar technology, and no training for the extreme cold. Yet within a few years, it would accomplish what many thought was impossible. By late 1984, China launched its first independent Antarctic expedition aboard a refitted cargo ship that was never designed for polar waters. The ship's hull was reinforced in a hurry, and its crew was made up of scientists, engineers, and naval officers with little experience in sub-zero conditions. According to mission records, they battled storms, faced temperatures below -40 degrees Celsius, and often slept in tents that froze solid overnight. The voyage tested every limit of endurance. After nearly 2 months at sea, they reached King George Island in the South Shetland Islands. There, in the heart of the storm belt, they built what would become Great Wall Station. The outpost rose in just 40 days. Workers labored through whiteouts, cutting frozen ground and hauling supplies by hand. When it was finished, it stood as China's first permanent mark on the Antarctic map and proof that the nation could survive conditions that had defeated others before. Through the late 1980s and 1990s, China continued to expand its reach. Zhongshan Station followed in 1989, providing access to East Antarctica. 2 decades later, the program pushed inland. Kunlun Station opened at Domei in 2009, followed by Taishan and Inexpressible Island stations. Together, these bases formed a research network across East Antarctica. Official reports described them as centers for climate and geological studies. Yet foreign analysts noticed something unusual. The stations formed a near-perfect triangle around the Gamburtsev subglacial mountains, the same buried range that radar first detected decades earlier. Many believed this formation was intentional. According to several analysts, the pattern placed China's research network directly over one of the most mysterious regions beneath the Antarctic ice. What exactly they were trying to map there was unclear.
A Chinese research team has set out for the highest location in Antarctica, the Kunlun Station, to carry out a 2-month inland expedition.
But in 2018 at Kunlun Station, the instruments began picking up something no one could explain: the echo that shouldn't exist. At Kunlun Station, the Chinese research team began a new phase of their mission. Their goal was to penetrate deeper into the Antarctic ice than any previous expedition. Using long-range radar arrays mounted on tracked vehicles, they sent powerful pulses through nearly 2 miles of frozen terrain. The system was designed to map the density and composition of the bedrock below the ice. For hours, the team expected to see only rough echoes from compacted layers of ice and stone. Instead, something completely unexpected appeared on their monitors. The returning signal did not behave like a normal geological reflection. Natural rock scatters radar energy unevenly, but this signal came back smooth and strong. The reflected wave showed a clean curve, almost as if it had bounced off a metallic surface. Thinking it was a malfunction, the technicians recalibrated the instruments, replaced transmitters, and adjusted frequencies. They rescanned the same area several times, but the same precise curve appeared again and again, always in the same spot. According to later accounts, the arc stretched across a section nearly 4 kilometers beneath the surface, forming the outline of what looked like a dome. To be certain, the team expanded the search area. They moved the radar vehicles several kilometers away and repeated the scans from new angles. Each time, the echo appeared in the same location, perfectly consistent in shape and strength. That was when the first technical issues began. Each time the radar beams swept across those exact coordinates, magnetic sensors near the vehicles began to spike. The readings climbed far beyond expected levels, briefly shutting down smaller instruments. Power monitors showed short voltage drops across the camp's systems, and the communications link to Zhongshan Station flickered in and out. When the radar stopped, the readings stabilized. When it resumed, the interference came back stronger. At first, the scientists assumed the cold had damaged the wiring. They inspected the power units and communication lines, but everything checked out. The malfunctions were not random. They only happened when the radar pulse hit the strange formation. That discovery unsettled the entire camp. Antarctica's bedrock has no known source that can create magnetic interference. For the readings to fluctuate that sharply, something beneath the ice had to be producing or reflecting energy. Some of the team quietly began to wonder if the anomaly was active. Unable to explain the results, the field team forwarded the raw data to Beijing for further analysis. Within days, the unusual readings reached the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Polar Research Institute. Analysts there reviewed the material and confirmed that the echoes were inconsistent with any known natural formation. Internal documents later identified the location as Anomaly G1, named after its coordinates in the Gamburtsev subglacial mountains. Measurements indicated a structure roughly the size of a football stadium buried under 4 kilometers of solid ice. Reports claim that the anomaly's geometry showed hollow sections inside the dome. It was not a solid mass, but a shape containing internal cavities. Some experts believed it could be the shell of an ancient meteor encased in ice. Others proposed that it was a cavern surrounded by frozen minerals, but several engineers reviewing the data disagreed. The surface was too perfect, the symmetry too exact. One summary reportedly concluded, "The structure reflects as if designed to do so." The discovery sparked debate inside China's polar research community. Was it a scientific breakthrough or something deliberately hidden beneath the continent? Teams warned that magnetic materials could be trapped in the ice, but no explanation fit the data. For weeks, the anomaly repeated the same echo as though signaling its own presence. Beijing's final directive was brief: confirm the source. The next phase would take the team deeper than any mission had ever drilled. The descent into the ice. Beijing's directive reached Kunlun Station at the height of winter. Within weeks, a special deep ice expedition was assembled. The mission began in early 2018, when a modified thermal drilling platform was flown in by cargo transport and reassembled on site. The equipment combined laser guidance, modular drills, and a mobile thermal unit designed to cut through solid ice without causing structural fractures. The crew worked in 2-minute rotations. The temperature was so low that hydraulic fluid froze mid-air and metal tools cracked if handled too long. Every shift was a test of endurance. Progress was painfully slow. The drill descended meter by meter, melting its way through layers of ancient ice that had not seen light for millions of years. Technicians watched live readouts from radar and magnetic sensors, hoping to confirm the earlier data. Instead, the electromagnetic readings grew stronger the deeper they went. At first, the signals were faint, then they began pulsing in steady intervals. The pattern repeated every few seconds, too regular to be random. One engineer later described it as unnatural but rhythmic, like a signal coming from beneath the surface. At a depth of nearly 4 kilometers, the drill's sound abruptly changed. What had been a deep grind turned into a sharp echo, the unmistakable sign of a hollow space. The team stopped immediately and lowered a fiber optic camera into the borehole. The feed flickered, then steadied. A curved surface appeared on the screen, smooth, metallic, and coated in frost. It reflected the camera's light in clean bands, like a mirror buried in ice. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then a technician whispered what everyone was thinking. This was it. The radar echoes, the magnetic spikes, everything pointed to this spot. The dome was real. The footage was transmitted to Beijing for verification. Within hours, analysts confirmed the reflection matched the exact coordinates of Anomaly G1. The mystery object was no longer theory. It was physical. Judging by the curve and depth, the structure stretched at least 100 meters across, far larger than any known meteor shell. Beijing gave immediate approval to expand the borehole. Heated plasma cutters were lowered into the shaft, widening the tunnel until the cameras could move freely. The expanded view revealed the dome in full. It extended beyond the frame of the video, embedded in layers of crystal-clear ice. Samples scraped from its surface refused to melt even under direct heat. When examined with portable spectrometers, the material reflected no known spectral signature. Nothing on record matched it. For the first time, the team understood they had uncovered something that might not be natural. But as they began drilling sample cores from the surrounding ice, the sensors registered irregular voids nearby, pockets that did not match the density of normal ice. When the samples were brought up, the team realized the object was not alone. Something else was frozen beside it. The living ice. When the first ice samples were lifted from the borehole, the scientists noticed something strange. The cores were supposed to be clear, frozen solid from top to bottom. Instead, several sections looked cloudy, like fog trapped inside glass. When held against the light, they saw tiny pockets of liquid sealed within the ice. Floating in those pockets were thin, thread-like strands that didn't look like cracks or mineral veins. They looked almost organic. For a long moment, no one spoke. The team realized that every sample taken near the metallic dome contained these same strange filaments. Inside the lab tent, the samples were thawed slightly for closer inspection. A researcher placed one slide under a portable microscope and adjusted the focus. As the image came into view, he turned up the light for clarity and froze. The thin strands moved. It was a small motion, just a twitch, but it was there. Thinking it was a mistake, he repeated the process. Each time the light brightened, the filament stirred, shifting in the water. The scientist called for a second opinion. Another researcher tried it, and the same thing happened. The movement was consistent. The room fell silent. What they were seeing wasn't mineral distortion or lens vibration. It was reaction. The threads were responding to light. According to later reports, the team immediately began basic biological tests. Under controlled lighting, the filaments continued to twitch and curl as though trying to follow the beam. For something buried 4 kilometers below the surface and sealed for millions of years, any movement at all was impossible. "This can't be alive," one of the scientists said quietly. Yet the evidence was right in front of them. The team conducted a quick genetic test using their portable sequencing equipment. When the data came back, the results shocked them. The DNA fragments didn't match anything known on Earth. It wasn't bacteria, fungus, or any recorded microbe. The sequences were complex, almost engineered. Some scientists suggested it might be a newly discovered extremophile that had survived in the ice. Others believed it could be a relic from an ancient time, long before known life evolved. A few whispered that the pattern looked unnatural, as if it had been created. Trying to make sense of the discovery, the lead researcher proposed a theory. The metal dome beneath the ice might have given off a weak but steady form of heat or radiation. That warmth could have created small zones of liquid water inside the frozen layers. The microbes might have survived there, protected for millions of years while the rest of the continent froze solid. It was the only explanation that fit the evidence. But it didn't make anyone feel safer. 2 days later, things began to change. Several sealed vials containing the samples started showing pressure increases. Bubbles appeared and disappeared inside the containers. When examined under magnification, the filaments had multiplied. On nearby tool trays, small patches of rust appeared, even though the equipment had been dry. 2 members of the research team reported irritation on their wrists after handling the samples. The rashes looked like mild burns, and a faint metallic smell lingered on their skin for hours. Concerned, the team sealed all materials inside heavy protective cases for transfer. But as they prepared to leave, the radiation counters in the lab began to climb. The readings were weak but increasing steadily. According to unverified reports, the spikes grew stronger each time the containers were moved, as if the samples were reacting to motion. The lead scientist ordered an immediate evacuation and secure transport. The cases were loaded for shipment back to the surface. But during the transfer, one of the containment vials shattered. The glass split with a sharp crack, and a mist of liquid hissed out before anyone could react. That was the moment the fear truly began. The awakening beneath the dome. The moment the containment vial shattered, everything at Kunlun Station began to change. Technicians rushed to clean the area, but within minutes the snow around the broken case began to darken. A faint shimmer spread across the ground, glinting under the floodlights like oil on water. When they tried to scoop it up, the substance melted into the snow and moved on its own, rippling toward the excavation site. Several witnesses described it as alive, and surveillance footage later showed the discoloration spreading in irregular lines toward the borehole. At the same time, the sensors positioned near the dome started recording new signals. Low-frequency pulses began echoing through the ground at perfectly timed intervals. Each pulse was followed by a sharp spike in temperature readings from below. The rhythm was too steady to be natural. It was as if something buried inside the dome had switched on and was now responding to what had been released above. The team tried to power down the drilling array and isolate the equipment, but their systems began to fail one after another. Power monitors fluctuated wildly. Compasses spun in full circles. The drones watching from above suddenly veered off course and crashed into the ice. The backup generator cut out, leaving only emergency lights. According to one unverified report, the communications officer attempted to contact Zhongshan Station, but the message was scrambled by heavy interference. Every attempt to re-establish contact failed. The source of the interference appeared to come from directly beneath the dome. Then came the first tremor. It was small at first, just enough to rattle the instruments. Moments later, a second vibration rolled through the ground, deep, rhythmic, mechanical. The pattern repeated every few seconds, like the sound of heavy gears turning. It did not sound like ice cracking, it sounded deliberate. The field crew outside froze in place. The lead scientist ordered an immediate evacuation and sent a coded emergency recall to Beijing. Before the order could be completed, the entire area erupted in light. A blinding flash burst from the borehole, followed by a wave of heat so strong it melted through several meters of snow and ice within seconds. The air temperature jumped by more than 20 degrees. Steam rose in thick columns, and the surrounding surface began to collapse inward. In the control room, instruments recorded a sudden spike in radiation, then total silence. Moments later, the readings reversed. Radiation levels dropped to zero, then flipped into negative values as if energy itself had been sucked out of the air. Scientists who later reviewed the data said it was physically impossible. Within minutes, all signals from Kunlun Station went dead. Satellites orbiting above recorded massive thermal distortion around the site. The entire area appeared to sink several meters into the ice, leaving behind only a faint heat signature. No further contact was made. All equipment was presumed destroyed. According to later accounts from scientists familiar with the project, a small number of crew members may have escaped before total signal loss, though their status remains unconfirmed. Some reports claim that not all of them survived, but official statements from Beijing denied any casualties and closed all investigation. Every log, transmission, and photograph from the expedition was sealed under state security orders. Weeks later, fragments of the data leaked, and what those fragments revealed would shock scientists around the world. The cover-up and the leaked files. The silence from Kunlun did not last long. Weeks after the incident, a short video began to circulate online. It showed the borehole surrounded by floodlights, a camera shaking as alarms sounded, and the metallic dome half buried in frost. The final few seconds captured a blinding flash that consumed the screen before the footage cut to black. Viewers who saw it early described it as terrifying. Within hours, the video disappeared from every major platform, replaced by error messages and broken links. According to researchers who archived fragments of the clip, The location matched the exact coordinates of Kunlun Station. The footage appeared genuine, showing the same drilling rigs, markers, and terrain visible in Chinese research photos taken before the expedition. Analysts noticed something else. The explosions seen in the clip spread out in a near-perfect circle, as if the blast originated from below rather than above. Beijing quickly released an official statement. The report described the incident as a glacial gas release, an event that supposedly caused heat spikes and the loss of sensitive instruments. It claimed there were no fatalities and no further danger. The explanation was brief and strangely detached, avoiding any mention of the radar anomaly, the microbial samples, or the ongoing blackout of communications. The statement only deepened suspicion. Then came the leaks. Anonymous emails reached journalists and science outlets with copies of internal mission summaries. The documents described the same explosion but included details missing from the official account. They mentioned magnetic pulses, temperature reversals, and a strange pattern recorded seconds before the blast. One message claimed the dome had not been opened by the scientists. "It opened itself," the sender wrote. Another suggested the energy surge was triggered by the moment the microbial sample was exposed to open air. None of the sources attached proof, and every message ended with a warning: stop asking questions. International scientists began to demand answers, but the Chinese Academy of Sciences refused to comment further. According to some reports, a few expedition members were quietly reassigned or removed from public rosters. Officials called it administrative restructuring. Critics called it a cover-up. As the story grew, one voice amplified it beyond the scientific community. Joe Rogan dedicated an entire segment of his podcast to the incident. He replayed the leaked clip frame by frame, asking why it was removed so quickly. He reminded listeners that Antarctica has long been the center of global secrecy. He cited Operation High Jump, the 1946 U.S. mission that sent thousands of troops south for unknown reasons. He mentioned maps that show ice-free coastlines centuries before modern discovery. He interviewed explorers who described Antarctica as a place that does not want us there. Rogan didn't claim proof. He asked the questions everyone else was too afraid to ask. Why would a simple gas release trigger radiation spikes, magnetic pulses, and a total data lockdown? Why would China erase the names of an entire crew if nothing had gone wrong? His discussion reignited worldwide interest. By the end of the year, two versions of the story existed. The official line said a natural ice event destroyed the equipment and ended the mission. The unofficial one said something ancient beneath the ice had awakened, and that it has never fully gone silent since. If that is true, the question is no longer what China found under the ice. It is what might already be awake beneath it. What do you think China really uncovered beneath the Antarctic ice? Share your theory with us in the comments below.